Welcome back to My Hero Academia Overanalyzed. Today's episode is Season 2, Episode 2, Roaring Sports Festival.
We call those who fight for justice and help others in need, heroes.
Interestingly, most of this beginning recap is reused animations from Season 1, some more obvious than others. I actually initially thought this All Might animation was new, but it's taken from Episode 1. Bakugo's cut is taken from the beginning of his and Izuku's fight, which is a bit harder to pin down since the frame rate is different. Ochaka's is from when she was trying to grab the bomb in the same episode, Ida's is from him escaping the USJ, and Todoroki's is probably the most obvious, which is from when he countered an attack in the USJ. Some of the other bits is that this cloud scene is taken from Episode 3 when Izuku's discussing crime rates, and this All Might pose is ripped straight from his character sheet. I think the only thing new outside of the composition here is Aizawa's animation, but the fact that it's the only one that's new makes me worry I missed something. From what I checked, it doesn't match up to anything though.
But All Might, that's your catchphrase.
Not only does this tie into something I touched on last episode with him not wanting to directly be the next All Might, but it also likely shows his respect for the hero he idolizes by not wanting to use his catchphrase. I also wanted to clarify a point here and dive a bit more into said point. I said last episode that Izuku never says "I am here" to the world, but that goes beyond just the literal words he's saying. He says early on that he wants to save people with a fearless smile and make them feel safe, but as he grows into his own hero, he doesn't direct that energy to the public or the world as a whole, but rather those he can reach out to personally. His idea of heroism is much more about understanding those he's fighting and working to help them as well as those that he's saving. This is very unlike All Might, who through his pure strength just beats people and moves on. Neither way of heroism is right or wrong, but it comes down to a big theme of generations and their archetypes. All Might is a Superman-like, pure good, someone people call to when they're in danger, and All for One is a pure evil villain. This is much like how superheroes used to be portrayed. The good guy beats the bad guy, simple as that. But My Hero Academia takes that idea and turns it on its head by having the next generation of heroes in-universe try and find the underlying issues at hand, as well as relying on each other to prevent tragedy from happening. It's reactionary action versus preemptive action, trying to help and stop those that would otherwise become a quote-unquote pure evil villain later on. This way of approaching the issue, though, means that the world lacks a symbol, as those on the outside aren't going to understand why the heroes are trying to talk to the villains, since it's still black and white in their eyes. This is why they have to work to build a society that helps each other rather than sitting idly by. A society of small heroes that can create a net of safety with each other, rather than one that looks to a beacon of hope and expects that symbol to save them. This is why Izuku never says to the world, "I am here," because that term symbolizes that beacon of hope, which Izuku isn't trying to be. And it's also why his "I am here" moment is saved very deliberately for a one-on-one scene with no one watching. Izuku is a subversion of All Might, just like how Shigaraki is a subversion of All for One. I'll leave it at that for now, but there's a lot of themes that tie into these ideas, so expect me to go into it more in the future.
Students are separated by class year, and then the support, business, general studies, and hero courses all fight against each other.
Seems a little messed up to pit hero course students against those that are just trying to study, but go off, UA. Imagine being a math major and having to deal with even the shit the obstacle course deals you, Jesus.
Already got the world's greatest hero teaching me, so the festival probably isn't my only hope of getting scouted by an agency.
Well, since right now it's meant to be a secret, I wouldn't say that. It's kind of interesting to see Izuku with a sort of nonchalant attitude here. This definitely contrasts how much of a drive he later gains through this stuff as he goes out of his way to get stuff like an internship with Night Eye later on.
I understand how you feel, and I may even be projecting a bit of myself onto you.
Considering it's basically confirmed that All Might excelled in the sports festivals when he was in UA, that's especially apt. Like I mentioned back in episode 3, I feel like a big reason why he chose Izuku to begin with was because of how much of himself he saw in Izuku. So it would make sense for All Might to want him to follow pretty close in his footsteps, especially since at this point he's thinking of Izuku as a replacement for the symbol of peace more than anything. Ooh, MHA, I caught you slipping a bit again. Not an animated clock too, what a shame. This hour hand here is a bit too far up to make sense. The hour hand is showing about 3:13, but the minute hand is on exactly the 20 mark, so this specific combo should be impossible. It's once again not nearly as egregious as the very first clock, but this is definitely a strong second place. Extra surprising since last episode we also had an animated clock that was perfect.
I wanted to be in the hero course, but like many others here, I was forced to choose a different track.
I guess if you assume everyone from the other courses wanted to also be in the hero course, it makes a bit more sense as to why you'd pit them against each other. But surely not everyone that's in general studies wants to be a hero. Hell, especially with courses that are more specialized like business or support. Also, assuming that this is the case and you have a bunch of people who want to be heroes, why don't we see more of them get past the first leg of the sports festival? Surely there would be a decent amount that could beat those with less mobility in Class A like Toru, Aoyama, Kaminari, Jiro, Kirishima, etc. I'll get more into that when we actually go through the obstacle course, I guess, though.
If any of us do well in the sports festival, the teachers can decide to transfer us to the hero course, and they'll have to transfer people out to make room.
This creates a really good sense of grounded stakes for those outside of the hero course, which is a good way to get us to care about specifically Shinzo and his struggles a bit more going into the sports festival, as well as worry about if one of the characters we know would get cut from the class, which adds a bit more stakes, even if it's not really followed through on in the future. This, with the addition of them also trying to impress agencies in the sports festival, provide much needed stakes and some interconnection to the story that I think is needed to make it feel more dynamic and interesting. And even on top of that, the deep personal emotions that are uncovered through the one-on-one fights creates an engaging arc even though the students aren't facing real danger, at least relative to actual villains. This is why I think this arc is so beloved in comparison to, say, Joint Training, since even though they're both school-setting focused combat arcs, the sports festival has more emotional and practical weight behind it for the characters. Plus, in addition to that, this arc being set as early as it is allows us to get to know a lot of the students and a bit of their depths for the first time. While Joint Training was trying to do that for 1B, it's more of an easy thing to care about for the class that the series is focused on. In general, the sports festival is a pretty smart way to get to know the class after the very Izuku, All Might, and Bakugo focused first season.
You won't beat me again! I'm just getting started!
This is a very early instance of Bakugo inspiring Izuku, or maybe more accurately at this point, pushing Izuku to do better. It's pretty spelled out here that Izuku is pretty clearly suffering from the fact that in his mind, he already accomplished the goal of getting into UA, which in his eyes is basically a fast track to becoming a hero. He was beginning to grow content with his place rather than trying to excel like he was before, but seeing both Bakugo's determination, on top of the people around him still striving for their best, inspires him to, for lack of a better term, lock the fuck in. I think it's a very interesting small character beat, and one I don't see mentioned almost ever. It can be hard to be motivated to the same extent once you already reach a goal, especially if it's a goal you never expected to get to, but seeing other people try their best and inspiring each other and yourself can be a huge motivator.
If you want to go... Look, kid, the difference between those mindsets impacts how far you'll go in the real world.
I really like this direction for the transition into training, showing his literal inspirations and then putting him on the very beach that he trained to get this far on, and using that to go into the montage with him training on said beach. Very cool bit of anime-only direction there. It's kind of strange to me for Toru to not have trained her body significantly, since that's the main thing she would rely on in combat. Like, invisibility for sure helps with evasiveness, but wouldn't you want to be as physically strong as possible to be able to take down villains if your quirk doesn't directly help in that regard? This location that Ojiro and Sero are training at here is likely the same one that Shoto and Momo face Aizawa at during the final exams. We also see Ochako, Oyama, and Mina training in the USJ, which, with all the shit that's happened there, I don't know if I'd willingly step foot in there again, but go off. This is kind of our first real hint at what Sato's power is in the anime. In the manga, however, this isn't present. In fact, most of this training montage outside of Mineta and Momo scenes are either original or pretty significantly changed. I mean, Kaminari goes from literally just having a wire in his mouth in the manga to shooting off a bunch of electricity in the anime. Speaking on some more detail in these scenes themselves, we get a glimpse at Jiro owning and thus likely knowing how to play guitar and the drums. In Mineta's room, we see that he has a Mount Lady figure. We also see a small bit of a Midnight figure. Unfortunately, neither of these have real-world counterparts. The posters on Mineta's wall are actually illustrations from the back of Volume 1 and 3. And this final one up here that you could barely see, I almost gave up on placing, but it's actually the very bottom of this specific Uwambi art, which was apparently made for Volume 7, but maybe unused since there's a different illustration on the back, which is where the other two were, and I can't find it in the volume itself. The only reason I found the art in the first place was because I flipped through the Ultra Artworks book as a last resort and stumbled upon it. This may be one of the most obscure details I've found if this artwork is only found in this one book. Finally though, Momo is likely studying because her quirk needs her to know the compounds of things to make them. Shoto actually steals this punch from Kirishima, who did it in the manga. Also, he's training in what seems to be the garden of his house that's shown in his flashback later this season.
I'll take one order to go, please.
Is the alternative to a to-go order at a food stand just eating it right in front of the guy who served it to you? Because there's not exactly anywhere to sit down. Also, the part with the food stand is an anime original extension of the scene from the manga, which is just them walking.
You've got All Might in your corner helping you out.
While the connection between Izuku and All Might likely first came to mind during the USJ attack in the moment where Izuku tried to save him, which I talked about extensively when that happened, we also see more recently Shoto overhear Ochako and Ida's conversation mentioning Izuku and All Might were eating together. This isn't exactly a hard thing to decipher, but I'm glad they set up this moment with a couple of things so their brief rivalry didn't come out of nowhere.
Don't forget, this isn't a team effort.
Bet he felt real stupid when the cavalry battle was announced, huh?
We're bringing you some of the hottest performances in UA's festival history, guaranteed!
I like the change of the audio when the camera goes into the booth itself. Very basic, but a cool audio detail to include, which makes the scene feel more alive. Oh hey, it's all the famous UA teachers. We have... okay, I won't do that bit again. But this is one of the other few times that we see these two nameless teachers in the show.
I didn't know there'd be so many people!
This line and the line previously said by Mount Lady implies that the sports festival's first year section is likely normally the least popular one, which makes sense since those participating are about as amateur as they can be with their powers. This boost in attention only comes from the fact that the USJ attack just happened. Cool world building there.
Someone should talk to Miss Midnight about what she's wearing.
Is that really appropriate apparel for a high school game?
That's what I'm saying! In a similar vein to Mineta, I likely won't harp on it too much, but honestly, Midnight might be worse than Mineta in a lot of cases. She makes me cringe. Really hate her quote-unquote humor. I honestly think the only reason why she gets a pass by a lot of people is because she's hot. Hey, you guys seem to like it when I did graphs, right? Well, let's do that again. As we are going through the sports festival, I want to compare the results of the race and any other events with how I think all the students could do based on my understanding of their quirks. Since this episode is literally just the first obstacle, here's that. A surprising amount of green, a lot of which is supported by the show itself. I don't think this is particularly crazy, but it's a start to see eventually how far off I think the students are from what I think they'd realistically place. Because, oh boy, I have some gripes with the lineup by the end. But for now, let's just put a pin in this. I always kind of passively wondered why in episode 5 she was barefoot, but going forward she was able to skate on her acid wish shoes, and it's answered pretty obviously here, with her having holes in the shoes to make the acid come out of. Those shoes must be made of some pretty crazy stuff, though.
But I wish they'd prepared something a little more difficult.
This insanely smooth animation is the first showing of probably the most well-known My Hero Academia animator, Yutaka Nakamura. He was already well established before My Hero Academia aired, but if you're in the MHA space, you're likely to know his name, and if you don't, you definitely know his animations. He has that distinctive cube-style debris and generally produces extremely smooth animation. Most notably from this season, he's the one who animated the big clash between Shoto and Izuku. Great first showing, kind of out of nowhere, definitely elevated this moment to be more memorable. I think just also showing this feat on the robot that Izuku also defeated gives a good baseline for the quirk's strength going in, showing immediately and clearly that he's incredibly powerful.
I froze them while they were off their balance. On purpose.
Bro thinks he's so tough, and he's kinda right. I gotta give it to him. He's kinda cooking. And that's the episode. Honestly, I had a bit more to say about this one than I expected. It definitely is a good setup episode, but outside of that, I feel like it's largely forgettable, which is fine, you gotta have them. But the little action at the end helps make this episode not a drag, I think. Generally, it's pretty well paced, and outside of Midnight, who honestly is far from her worst yet, I have no major complaints. Just a solid setup. I really look forward to going into my thoughts on the rest of the sports festival. That's about all for today, though. To get teasers for upcoming episodes and get access to these videos without copyright prevention measures, you can join my Patreon for as little as $3. And is that Simon Plush, the #1 pro hero? Thanks as always for your support. Next time is In Their Own Quirky Ways. Let's see Izuku go boom and more of UA's lack of safety measures. I'll see you then.